What's up, everybody? I hope my headphones work. I am going to invite my friend Dr. Jill Carnahan on, if you can actually hear me, because I'm using a headset, which I don't think you can. All right, if you can hear me, Lori, just tell me that my headset works. I don't think it's working. How about now? Can you hear me now? This sucks. All right, no headset for you guys. I'm just doing it on speakerphone. Here we go. I am here at Upgrade Labs, and I'm going to invite Jill Carnahan on, who is one of the speakers at the upcoming biohacking conference. Let's check this place out. It's backwards. It says I am, and a bunch of cool stuff you can't really read. There's this big purple glass wall, cool tech over here, because pretty much I want to be Tron. All right, I'm going to invite her in. We're going to talk about toxins. Why would you worry about toxins? Because toxins actually lower your performance. It's not just about, oh, I want to be clean, something like that. So let's see if I can bring her in. Send her an invite. So here's the thing. Mold in our environment, mold in our food, mold growing in our bodies is a massive, massive problem for humanity, actually for animals as well. It's a big problem. So why is it a big problem? It's because we are running based on ancient bacteria. That's what powers us. These are our sensors, the things that allow us to sense the environment and make energy and make protein. Well, what's the ancient enemy of molds? Or of bacteria? It's mold. So mold makes antibiotics. Antibiotics are anti-human. And if you're living in a house that makes its own antibiotics, you kind of have problems. Do I see you, Dr. Jill Carnahan?
Hello. Dave, how are you doing? Good to see you again.
It's good to see you again. You came up to visit a long time ago. I remember that.
Yeah, I loved seeing your facility, and it's probably grown in the last, I don't know, it's been like 5 years.
Oh, yeah. This is a whole new place.
Oh, my God. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, I was just talking about the biohacking conference. By the way, guys, biohackingconference.com. There's another few days left. There's still a 20% early registration discount, September 17th through 19th in Orlando. The hotel's super affordable with high-end food. And guess who's speaking there? Dr. Jill. Jill, tell me about toxic mold. Before you came on, I was saying how evil it was. Tell me how bad mold is, or good it is.
Yeah, so you and I know this is this invasive, invisible invader, and it is affecting so many people. And especially last year, as everybody went hibernating in their homes, which about 1/4 to 1/3 of homes in the US are toxic with mold. So all of a sudden we saw an epidemic. We were dealing with an epidemic before, and I think it's kind of silent, right, Dave? Because they present with autoimmunity, they present with thyroiditis, they present with MS, they present with brain and neurological dysfunction, and they don't know that the root cause is mold.
Yeah. I have some private data about a certain species of mold that's not even recognized as toxic, that somehow is always present in the homes of people with ALS. So what we're dealing with is you do one thing, and then a year later, you have all sorts of weird health problems, and no one knows what's going on. And so then we just feel like we're victims and that we're helpless and things like that. No, there's a cause for it, and we can measure it now, which is really cool. And by the way, Will, this is not my tan filter. This is something called MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone.
Cool.
And toxic mold reduces MSH levels in people, and you can inject it, which then is good for you. So I have a tan because it's a real tan.
I love it. And let's talk just a little bit about that, because I think I heard you as I was trying to get on about the microbiome in mold. So this is really cool. I'm sure you know this, Dave, because you are up on all the data, but MSH in mold is affected. It's usually lowered. So sometimes people measure literally 0 in MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone. This is one of the orchestrators of the hypothalamic pituitary axis. All that matters to you as you're listening is it affects estrogen, testosterone, it affects thyroid, it affects adrenals, it affects all of your endocrine hormones. But worse than that, there are studies in animals that show low MSH is associated with Crohn's and colitis, Dave. So like inflammatory bowel disease. And as you know, my history, almost 20 years ago, I had breast cancer and then Crohn's disease. When I look back, it's kind of similar to yours. I think mold was involved on all levels of my illnesses before.
Yeah. People ask me if I'm going to save this. Yeah, I'll save it for you. And here's the thing. A lot of us are exposed to mold as kids because schools, they don't spend money on roofing.
Right.
So you have these kind of dank smelling classrooms, and about 28% of the population has genes like you and me.
Yep.
That makes us more susceptible. So we're better equipped to be basically marauders, roaming from village to village, taking a few arrow hits, getting
Yeah.
bacteria. So we're really resilient for that, and we're also good at going a few days without eating.
Yeah.
The difficulty there is that also means you recycle fat, which is where the mold hides. It hides in the fat inside your body. So because of that, we tend to get sicker and stay sicker. But mold toxins cause cancer and cardiovascular disease and inflammation in everyone. But
Yeah.
sometimes we feel wrecked. And that pasty look, the one that Will was commenting that I don't have, well, that's
Yes.
because your MSH got dropped. You can't even get a tan in the sun because of that.
Yeah, MSH affects everything, and people don't really realize that. And I test people universally who we think have mold, and I would say it's probably 80% of them have less than 8, and ideal is above 30. Somewhere in the mid 30s and above is ideal. So it's really common. It's one of the markers that I'll test to see if someone could possibly have mold in their environment. What do you have there?
I was just testing whether it looked cool through the camera.
It looks really cool. I want to know. I've got all my biohacking devices around here too, but not nearly as many as you.
This is a piece of tech that actually increases mitochondrial function using
amazing.
structured water vapor.
Uh-huh.
It's at Upgrade Labs. But the reason I was kind of doing that, what you were talking, is that when people have mold issues, they always have mitochondrial energy issues.
Yes.
They just don't make enough electrons. And this is one of those ways that you can actually increase electrons in the body. You make it easier to do it. And here's a question for you. Marcy says, I was diagnosed with aspergillosis, mild.
Yeah.
How common is it that people live in moldy homes get a mold infection in their lungs or in their body?
Oh, okay. This is big, Dave, because people are not looking for this. And I have at least a half a dozen cases that I have diagnosed where a pulmonologist, expert in infectious doc missed it because they're like, oh, that doesn't happen. And I insisted on them doing a bronchoscopy where they take fluid lavage from the lungs to show that there was aspergillus actually growing in the lungs. The other thing, even the infectious docs that I've worked with don't always know, is the susceptibility of the different azoles. So fluconazole won't touch aspergillus. Itraconazole will barely touch it. You need voriconazole. So I'm actually, like, you have to know which types of drugs are better for which things. Fluconazole is better for candida. Itraconazole is okay for some aspergillus, maybe in the sinuses, but when you're really dealing with a severe infection. And the other thing, the treatment, it needs to be like 6 months sometimes, like a very long time.
It can be 6 to 9 months for people who get this, and it can linger for years and years. So what oftentimes happens, people are saying, I was doing really well, and then I moved into this one apartment, and it was a little bit funky, and I saw some mushrooms growing on the baseboards, and I lived there for only 3 months, and things have never been the same. Now I'm on thyroid medications, I'm allergic to foods, I'm tired, my sleep went away, I can't lose the 30 pounds, I have rashes. My brain doesn't work. I yell at my wife or husband or whatever, and all that stuff happens. Like it's just a serious thing, and like what? And you get done, but if you actually got infected there, it can be a problem.
So, and Dave, let me tell you something really interesting. There's a colleague of ours that we know well. He was a leader in toxicology and functional medicine, and he taught many of us who are in this field over the years. Like, he was a hero of mine. He died a year ago from aspergillosis that was misdiagnosed as cancer for 1 year. And the reason was his immune system was, when that grows in your body, those produce mycotoxins, which actually suppress your natural immunity. So you actually look like an AIDS or an HIV or someone who's completely immune compromised because you're growing the same things they use to make immune compromised drugs in your own body. And so these people present with a massively weakened immune system. As you can imagine, it's a double whammy, because then this immune system, which is supposed to keep that mold and yeast and fungus types of stuff under control, is not working. So it gets out of control. This man died. And again, he is someone well known. I don't want to mention names because it's his personal story and medical history, but he worked in a naturopathic school that was contaminated with aspergillus. He got an aspergilloma. He was misdiagnosed for 1 year, and he died. And initially they thought for a year it was cancer. So it was misdiagnosed for all that time.
A substantial number of cancer diagnoses are actually fungal infections. And
Absolutely.
the leading voice behind that is our mutual friend, Dr. Doug Kaufman.
Yeah.
And by the way, the guy you're talking about, I believe, was in Moldy, my documentary, if he's the...
I bet we're talking, again, I want to be careful to protect his privacy, but...
So it's really interesting, guys. You're listening to this going, what? I had no idea. But this is 100 million structures in the country, 28 million people. Mm-hmm. This is extra kryptonite, and it's bad for all of us, and it's nailing our kids.
Yes.
So you want to know more about this? If you go to the biohacking conference, biohackingconference.com, you're going to see Jill on the Kryptonite versus Superhuman panel that I'm moderating in person. Use code Florida, because that's where it is in Orlando. Save 20% if you go there right now. Biohackingconference.com, use code Florida, and you're going to get to meet Jill in person, and we're going to talk about this and some other things like metals and things that are actually getting into our bodies and making us less than we are, right? It's that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So it's actually something that affected me as a kid. I grew up in a moldy basement, right, with toxic mold, and no wonder my behavior profile file was this thick. This is like the most troubled kid ever, and no wonder I was on antibiotics for 15 years. No wonder I weighed 300 pounds. No wonder I have stretch marks. Yeah, thank you, toxic mold.
Yeah.
Right? No one knew, but now we know, and so there's no excuse.
Absolutely. And Dave, if I could simplify functional medicine in like 2 seconds, it's literally toxic load, infectious burden. So this toxic load, the number one thing I see is mold. Mold weakens the immune system. Old infections that shouldn't be an issue start to pop up and cause issues like aspergillosis, Lyme disease, et cetera, et cetera. And this is the conundrum that we deal with every day, toxic load, infectious burden. So totally come to the conference. I'll be there. I can't wait to talk on your panel, Dave. And we will talk more on mold and all this environmental toxic load. It's getting worse and worse.
It is getting worse. And part of this is the pandemic. And if you're in a home all the time and you're breathing all the time, there's just more humidity, and that's what makes mold grow. And if you have a home like let's say a home like an Airbnb, and the Airbnb is empty for a long time, well, it's going to be funky in there, right? And this happens a lot, especially in humid environments. You go in and like, oh, that's not so good. I'll open the window. But no, you're just not going to feel good. And it also then is a building you don't want to be in. So something that I just posted here is Homebiotic. This is one of the, you guys wouldn't know this. I started 5 companies that are around increasing human performance. One of them called Homebiotic, like probiotic, but for your home, is a soil bacteria that, actually it's a bunch of them, about 9 of them, that actually eats mold as its food. So I inoculate my home and my car, everything, anywhere that might get moisture with that, so that mold is less likely to grow. And that is like $20. Like, it is a very affordable thing meant to be globally available to help us combat this problem. There's air filters, there's all kinds of air tests you can do, but if you've been sick, you need a doctor like Dr. Jill. She's a world-class expert and really has focused her career on this, and there aren't many doctors who really understand what she just told you. Oh, you might need to be on an antifungal medication for 6 months because you lived in a house for 3 months that trashed your biology, and you will die 20 years earlier of a neurodegenerative disease if you don't do that. But it's 20, 30, 40 years later, you just have a shitty life between now and then. You don't have to do that, right? That's why this is so important.
Awesome. I can't wait to join you, Dave, and excited to talk about it today.
Well, guys, you should follow Dr. Jill if you want to know more about mold and toxins. It's going to be a lot of fun. And fun, yes, learning is fun, even if you learn about this kind of stuff. The conference is going to be amazing. Hugs, everything. I'll see you at the conference. Dr. Jill, thank you.
Awesome. Sounds great, Dave. Thanks so much for all you do. Bye-bye.
You guys, bye.